اهدنا الصراط المستقيم.
لا تكونوا كالذين تفرقوا واختلفوا من بعد ما جاءهم البينات. Don't be like those who fell into disagreement. And after they fell into disagreement, they fell apart. I shouldn't have said fell into disagreement, they fell apart. Okay? They broke up into groups and then disagreed. And so it's important that Allah says, تَفَرَّقُوا وَاخْتَلَفُوا. Because ikhtilaf could be legitimate and illegitimate. But this ikhtilaf is after what's already happened. Tafarruq is already happened, so it's actually creating a particular line of thought. I'm only going to do ikhtilaf to justify my fariq. I'm only going to disagree to justify my faction. Don't become like those people whose only debates are about protecting their faction, their group, their school of thought. Don't be like that. Don't protect that. مِن بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتِ. Even after the clearest proofs have come to them, those proofs, those ayat, those ahadith, those stories from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, they're not being used to protect the religion, they're being used to protect your particular view. It's just progressing your thought forward. That's what they're being used for. Don't become like them. وَأُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. And for those people, those individuals, for them especially, is painful or great punishment. يَوْمَ تَبْيَضُّ وُجُوهٌ. The day on which some faces are going to be full, they'll become totally white. إِبْيَضَّ يَبْيَضُّ إِبْيِضَادًا. إِفْعَلَّ. What was the pattern of colors? إِفْعَلَّ يَفْعَلُّ إِفْعِلَالًا. So إِبْيَضَّ يَبْيَضُّ إِبْيِضَادًا, right? To become white. The day on which some faces become white. Somebody tell me why it's تَبْيَضُّ وُجُوهٌ, not يَبْيَضُّ وُجُوهٌ. Why is it feminine? Yeah, wujuh, broken plural. Because the day on which some faces will become completely white. وَتَسْوَدُّ وُجُوهٌ. And some faces will become completely black. In other words, they'll be in darkness. Some faces will have so much light on them, they'll turn white by the light. And some faces will be in so much darkness that they'll just turn black. It's an expression of where they will be on Judgment Day. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ اسْوَدَّتْ وُجُوهُهُمْ. Then as for those whose faces had been turned black, أَكَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ. In between the lines. As for those whose faces have been turned black, let me give you a little glimpse of what's going on with them. The words that are being said to them by the angels. أَكَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ. You disbelieved after you had faith? You had iman and you fell into factions? You were given that which could unify humanity, and you use it to create disunity within the ummah itself? How could you? How could you do such a crime with this gift? You did kufr after your iman? فَذُوقُوا الْعَذَابِ. Then taste the punishment. بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْفُرُونَ. Because of the disbelief you had always been engaged in. By the way, the first act of breaking up into a fariq, becoming a fariq by himself, is that of shaitan. He separates himself and justifies it. وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ بِيَضَّتْ وُجُوهُهُمْ. And as for those whose faces have been turned white, they've been lit, فَفِي رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Then what can be said about them? They are in the mercy of Allah. Allah doesn't even say فَهُمْ فِي رَحْمَةِ. Not even a sentence. Just know, in the mercy of Allah. Fill in the blanks yourself. You know, how many things can fill in? They're enjoying themselves in the mercy of Allah. They enjoy His closeness in the mercy of Allah. They're in paradise. They're living forever in the mercy of Allah. هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. In which they will remain permanently. تِلْكَ آيَاتُ اللَّهِ نَتْلُوهَا عَلَيْكَ بِالْحَقِّ. Those are the miraculous signs of Allah. We're reading them on to you with truth. Allah says, we're having these ayat read on to you with a purpose. There's a reason. Al-Haqq. Haqq doesn't just mean truth, it also means purpose. Good reason. There's justification for these ayat. I'm telling you this because this will be a problem. And you need to listen to this because this will be a living problem, and these will be living solutions for you. Bil-Haqq. وَمَا اللَّهُ يُرِيدُ ظُلْمًا لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And Allah does not intend, Allah is not the one at all that intends wrongdoing for any of the nations, for the peoples of the world. It's not Allah, it's shaitan. مَاللَّهُ يُرِيدُ. It's not Allah at all. People argue to this day, they argue, why does God create hell? Why does He want to put people in hell anyway? What does He get out of it? مَاللَّهُ يُرِيدُ ظُلْمًا. Allah does not want oppression at all. But He does say, مَاللَّهُ يُرِيدُ, making it a jumla ismiya, Allahu yuridu, as opposed to saying yuridullahu. If you say Allahu yuridu, it implies al-ithbat ala ghayr al-fa'il, another doer in there somewhere. It isn't Allah in fact that wants wrong, bad, oppression for people, but who does? Shaitan does want it. Shaitan does want, yes, there is a plan to put you in hell, but it's not Allah's plan. That's Shaitan's plan. You want to follow it? Go ahead. لِلْعَالَمِينَ, for all nations. وَلِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. There's a lesson I need to give you guys about لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. There are some ayat that just describe the greatness of Allah. In the middle of a conversation, the subject will change and all of a sudden Allah will talk about how great He is, how much He owns, how much He knows, etc., etc., etc. Some kind of discussion about the greatness of Allah. Just know one general rule of thumb about that. The more Allah describes His greatness, the more the servant is supposed to feel insignificant. The more Allah describes His grandeur, the more it drives the servant to feel humbled. The converse is supposed to happen. If you read the ayat of Allah's greatness and they don't make you feel lower, then you've missed the point of those ayat. The point of those ayat is to put us in our place. The previous ayat talked about people having knowledge of revelation and still falling into disagreement, yes? They have knowledge, but that knowledge did not lead to unity as it should have. If they held on to the rope of Allah, they would not have been divided, they would have created unity, but rather they violated what they were given. They violated what they were given. That means that they weren't able to humble themselves. So you need to be reminded. You need to be put in your place again. Who are you dealing with actually? Who is it? Whose word is it that you're playing with, that you're manipulating for your own purposes? So, وَلِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. And to Allah alone, whatever's in the skies and whatever's in the earth belongs. وَإِلَى اللَّهِ تُرْجَعُ الْأُمُورِ. And to Allah alone, all issues will be returned. رَجَعَ يَرْجِعُ رُجُوعًا فَهُوَ رَاجِعٌ رُجِعَ يُرْجَعُ رُجُوعًا فَهُوَ مَرْجُوعٌ. Okay? Marju'a, that which is returned. Turja'u, she will be returned. Who is she? Al-umur, decisions, affairs, whatever you had done, all of it will be returned to processing to Allah Azza wa Jal. How much have I gone on? Have I gone on for an hour? I don't feel like it. Huh? Oh, okay, I'll keep going. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. You, all of you, are the best of nations that has been brought out for the people. Kuntum khayra ummatin. Y'all are the best of all nations. That part of it sounds really cool. Oh yeah, best of all nations. Except Allah put an adjective on it. Ukhrijat is sifa. Ukhrijat linnas is sifa. He says, you're the best of all nations that has been brought out, extracted. Now if it's, he said, kuntum khayra ummatin kharajat. Kharajat linnas. You're the best of all nations that came out. Then the credit would go to the nation. He says, kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat. Akhraja yukhriju ikhrajan fahuwa mukhrij. Then what? Ukhrija, the feminine ukhrijat. You have been brought out. The nation that has been brought out. Ukhrijat. Akhraja, he brings out. Ukhrija, he's brought out. Okay? Ukhrijat linnas, you've been brought out for people. In other words, you get no credit for rising. You get zero credit for being formed as a nation. You were brought out means you're not the doer. The doer is implied to be unknown, and obviously who is it? Allah Azza wa Jal. You've been brought out by Allah as a nation. For what purpose? If you say here, minan nas, kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat, minan nas, if you say that, then it means you're the best nation brought out as opposed to all other people. You're better than everybody else. Minan nas. Does the ayah say minan nas? No. It says lin nas. Too often we recite this ayah and we think we're the best nation. But that's not what the ayah is saying. He's saying you're the best qualified. You were only brought out like a tree was only raised so it can give shade. So only for that reason. Imagine a planter, only put it there so it can give fruit, it can give shade. Allah says you were only brought out for the people. Linnas, for the people, to serve people, to help people, to bring goodness to people, to do amr bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar to people. This is the only reason you were inaugurated. There was a nation before you, it was given preference over all other nations for the same reason. They didn't hold up their task. Your turn. You are now brought up for the people. Don't think of yourself as superior to the people, because you'll miss the point. You're here for them. تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Obviously, you guys, now that you've been brought out, you command the good. You suggest, advise, consult, and you call people to that which is known to be good. Notice that muruna is the present tense. Yes? You know, in the previous ayah, there should be a nation that does it. There should be a nation that does it. Does that mean it's happening or no? If Allah says it should be happening, it doesn't mean that necessarily that it's happening. Now He says, you're the best nation brought out for humanity, and in fact, you do command to the good, of course. And you forbid the evil, obviously. When He says it like that, He's not saying something that might happen, He's saying that something is, in fact, happening. Now let me put it to you in perspective so you appreciate what I'm trying to get at. I know my daughter didn't do the homework, for example. And I say to her, you do your homework every day. Alhamdulillah, you did it today too, very good. Is she embarrassed if she hears that? If she knows she didn't do it? Actually, Dad, I didn't do it. What do you mean you didn't do it? You're a student, right? You're a Muslim, right? You're supposed to do it, right? So I assume that you will do it. Of course you would. Why wouldn't you? It's like Allah mentioned it as a matter of fact. Oh, you're the best nation brought for people, and of course you command the good. And you forbid the evil, right? And we sit there listening and go, yeah, I guess. Not really. It's humiliating. On the one hand, it should be an honor. If we're doing it, it should be an honor. And if we're not doing it, it should be like, oh my God. Allah didn't just put it as a command here. Because even if Allah did a command, it would imply we're not already doing it. It is as though now that the previous ayat have put that expectation, He expects it should be done already. So He says, of course you're doing it. Aren't you? وَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ. While you have iman in Allah. And this iman in Allah at the end as a hal is mentioned because of course you have iman in Allah, why wouldn't you do these things? It is your iman in Allah that leads you to do this. It's mentioned at the end this time to suggest, well, that's why you do it. Because of your iman in Allah. وَلَوْ آمَنَ أَهْلُ الْكِتَابِ. And had the people of the book only believed, had they only done so, لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ. It would have been so much better for them. It would have been good for them if they came to iman. مِنْهُمُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Among them there are still people that have real potential for faith, or they are already true believers that have already come to Islam or will come to Islam, and Allah knows, He knows it to a guarantee, so He calls them mu'minun. وَأَكْثَرُهُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. While most of them are corrupt. What is their corruption? Allah commands them to do something, and they don't do it. Allah commanded us to amr bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar. We haven't done it. So this is again a look in the mirror. أَكْثَرُهُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Inshallah ta'ala, in our next session, I'll talk a little bit about amr bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar. Just some things, not everything, but some things that should be mentioned before we go forward, and then we'll pick up from there. بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن الحكيم ونفعني وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم.